All right, welcome everyone to Chicago's virtual screening party for Brave Blue World. We're so excited that you're all here with us tonight for our first ever screening from home party. And we are excited to have record turnout for this event. We're expecting many people to be joining us tonight. And so glad you're all here from wherever you're tuning in, around the Chicago region or beyond. You've all received an email from Current, probably multiple, from Eventbrite with very specific turn-by-turn directions to walk you through the logistics for the event tonight. So if you're listening now, you've already made it to our first Zoom room. That's great. I will be walking you through those directions at the end of the opening remarks to make sure you know exactly how you're going to be switching over to the viewing platform and then coming back to Zoom for our terrific panel after the film is over. So on behalf of Current and our screening partners, the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago and the Illinois Water Environment Federation, I want to thank each and every one of you for choosing to spend your valuable evening hours talking with us about the future of our most precious natural resource, water. The cross-sector conversations and collaborations that make this film possible, just like the conversations and collaborations we know it will spark, are what Current lives for. The people whose stories you're going to hear from this evening on the big screen and on your Zoom screens are our real life partners. Here's our agenda for our screening. So I'm going to give a few opening remarks that I'm really excited to introduce Paul O'Callaghan, who is the executive producer of Brave Blue World and also a serial innovator in his own right. He's going to give us a personal introduction to the film. We'll be switching over to view the film together. It's about 50 minutes long. And then we'll be coming back together for a brief panel conversation featuring some of the stars of the film and some of our own leaders from right here in the Chicagoland region. Current is Chicago's water innovation hub. We work to grow Chicago's blue economy, strengthening the marketplace for water technologies by connecting people with big ideas to solve water problems with the resources to bring them to scale. And the marketplace for water innovation, as you're going to see in the film tonight, is truly global. Yet it takes deep local knowledge about particular challenges to know what it takes to address them. In much of the world, even in much of the US, access to fresh, clean water is a pressing daily concern. Here in Chicago, we are blessed with proximity to a fifth of the world's fresh water in the form of our Great Lakes. But we too have big challenges with urban flooding, shoreline erosion, water quality, access, and affordability. With the illusion of abundance and limitless supply, sometimes we waste more of our clean water than we should. Because it's so critical to life, water's long been the source of deep and intense conflict. And the film we're gonna watch together tonight, you're going to see a lot of it. But what's so valuable about the work that this film has done for us is to put that conflict in the context of its power to drive a story forward. I don't know if any of you have read the book Story by Robert McKee, but it's literally the book on screenwriting. And he calls conflict the music of story. It's what moves us forward. It's what drives us. And crisis, even deep crises like water, these present decision points in story. They're opportunities to make a decision to move things forward. So in the stories of water innovators that you're going to hear tonight, you can see the work, the real work that it takes to turn conflict and crisis into progress and opportunity. And each one of these stories is truly inspiring. It took the work of many people to bring these stories to life. We have several of them with us tonight, as I've said. But I'm really especially delighted. You're going to hear from some of them after the film. We'll be introducing Randy Connor, the Commissioner of the City of Chicago's Department of Water Management, Tom Kunetz, who is the immediate past president and Board of Trustees member at Water Environment Federation, and just recently retired from our own Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago as the Assistant Director of Monitoring and Research. And you're going to see from Tom in the film. Also in the film, you're going to hear from Vinod Ramachandran, who's the Global Open Innovations Leader from Suez. And we'll also hear from Kimberly Kupiecki, who's the Global Leader for Sustainability, Advocacy, and Communications at DuPont Water Solutions. So really excited to have this terrific blend of public and private sector innovators with us tonight. It is now my pleasure to welcome, all the way from his home in Ireland, Paul O'Callaghan, the executive producer of Brave Blue World. Paul is a serial water entrepreneur. So he's the founder of Blue Tech Research and Blue Tech Forum, and he's also a lifelong learner. He's currently a PhD candidate in water technology innovation. You can be a PhD candidate in water technology innovation, which I love. Paul, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us all the way from Ireland. And I wanted to open with a question if I could. So you've said that the inspiration for this film came from a conversation with taxi drivers, or maybe multiple conversations with taxi drivers. Can you open us up by telling us more about that and your inspiration and what you did to bring this film to life?
Sure, I'd be delighted to. Thanks a million, Alina, and everybody for hosting this. We're super excited to share this with you. Yeah, it's with my job, I usually travel a lot, not at the moment, but that would be normally a part of it. And as I travel the world, when you're going in from the airport and you're in an Uber or a cab, and you're chatting about why you're in the city and what brought you here, I often mention, I'm here for a water conference or work in water. And the conversation in certain cases is really informative. It's, if you go to Singapore, for example, or Israel or the Netherlands, people straight away start talking about water. In Singapore, they say, well, we've got new water here and we're very proud of it and we reuse our water. In the Netherlands, they'll say, we're underwater, and they're very proud of their achievements in engineering to keep that water out of the cities. Likewise, in Israel, it's fundamental to the security and the future of that nation. And it always struck me that if you can get that type of grassroots engagement with water, where people really get it and it resonates with them at a visceral level, you go an awfully long way towards solving water challenges. Because as I go about my daily job at Blue Tech and Blue Tech Forum, I see tremendously exciting solutions. And a lot of what the general public hear about isn't that side of it. It's more of the apocalyptic, the doom and gloom, the negativity, the wars that we fought over water, and the challenges we face, which are very, very real. But yet there are solutions, and that's why we use that emblem of a lighthouse, so that the stories in the film represent lighthouses. And if you can get people to engage with that topic, that was where the kernel of the idea came from, that people are so important to everything we do, that if you can get people on board, they make it easier for policymakers, elected officials. That then helps utilities like MWRD adopt the types of innovations that will feature in the film that you're about to see. And indeed, the investment community, who would love to find ways to invest in water. It just makes it easier for all these different pieces to come together. And the narrative, which is built, again, like you mentioned, Alina, on that kind of conflict driving the story, is ever present. But this might have only remained an idea rattling around in the back of my mind, were it not for some very brave people or partners who got on board and got behind that vision, the Water Environment Federation being key among them. And about just over 2 years ago, we had a retreat in San Francisco called Partnering for Impact. And over the course of a weekend, and Tom Kunetz was there and many others, we talked about how within our sector, we're very passionate about what we do, but we don't always tell our stories very effectively. So I said, I have an idea. I think that a documentary film could be a great medium for us to tell those stories. And after that, I became a conduit. And WEF came on board, DuPont Water Solutions, Suez, Xylem, Aqualia, and that began an odyssey, which began at Davos last year with an interview with Matt Damon, which Aoife and I were at on my team, and it was a surreal moment. That led to filming on 5 continents and all sorts of adventures, being chased by monkeys that were trying to steal the cameras and all sorts of things like this, and culminating with the premiere in Hollywood. So it was a dream come true, really. But equally exciting is what's happening here today and the sharing of the film, because that's what it's all about. It was created to, as you said, Elena, to spark discussion and create debate and get people thinking differently, thinking, God, what could I do? Is there a career for me here? Is there an opportunity to engage? So super excited to be showing this virtually and really looking forward to your reactions, and hope you enjoy the film.
Thank you so much, Paul. And thank you for everyone that's here listening in, that was part of the cast of thousands it took to bring this film to life, because I know there were many more people than we can possibly thank. So let's get to it. One of the ways that Current delivers on our mission is to connect and to accelerate water problem solvers by hosting events like this one. We're really excited about tonight because this big, beautiful network of home theaters we've assembled holds the collective power of, I don't know, what are we up to? Hundreds of problem solvers with burning questions and big ideas about how to build a better world for water, a better world with water, a braver and bluer world. So I want to thank our funders and our partners, MWRD, the City of Chicago Department of Water Management, University of Chicago, Northwestern University, the University of Illinois, Greeley and Hansen, the McDougall Family Foundation, the McKnight Foundation, the Chicago Community Trust, Island Water Technologies. All of these partners come together to make events like this possible, and we're truly grateful for their support. Now I want to call your attention to the logistics part so we can make this transition. We're all going to be total experts at this, viewing the film. Okay, so make sure you have the link below. This has been made possible only to people who registered for the film. So you need this link that is at the bottom of the slide. There's a username and a password. You're going to need to put that in a browser window, hit play, enjoy the film. Don't close your Zoom, leave it open, because we're going to be coming back with that fabulous panel that we just teased. They're going to be discussing the film, and most importantly, we're all going to be talking about what it is that we can do to take this inspiration and bring it to action here in our region in Chicago and around the world. So thank you very much and enjoy the show. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed the film as much as we did. And we would love to get some live audience feedback that you obviously did not even need me to prompt. So I see all of you are already in the poll. That's great. We wanted to get a sense of the room and what part of the water sector you work in. Water, wastewater, education, research. Oh, it's great to see those live results. All right. Keep them coming. We'll keep this poll open for just a little bit longer. All right. Last chance to submit your questions, your answers to poll question number 1. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and end this and share the results with everyone. All right, top choice, no surprise, water, although closely followed by wastewater specifically. Lots of tech and engineering represented here. Some government. Yeah, all right. Great, so we've got another poll coming right up. See? Great. So we would love to know how you think you might take action on some of the issues that you heard about in the film tonight. We've got multiple choice and other, which should allow you to put in a free response, I think. All right, a few more seconds, get your responses in. All right, ready to see your results? All right. Lots more learning inspired. That's fantastic. Some donations to charities that work on water issues. Looks like really high marks for supporting brands that make a conscious effort with regards to water use and impact. And this is really encouraging. The top answer, advocate for more effective policies. That's great. So terrific that we have some government representatives in the audience tonight. All right. Wow, a really even mix here. So curious to see what the others are. All right, and our final poll question for the evening. What word best sums up the film for you? Provocative, inspiring, informative, worrisome, stressful, or other? All right, last chance. Survey says inspiring. That's good, because it's Wednesday and we need to be inspired and informed much more than we need to be stressed, although there are some really serious issues that we're talking about here. So that is fantastic to see. And with that, I hope everybody has rejoined us, because we are really privileged to have some of the stars of the film and local leaders right here in our Chicago region joining us for this post-screening conversation. So I'm going to go ahead and George, you want to bring our panelists live? Excellent. So if everyone at home can join me in a round of at-home applause to welcome our panelists. Really happy to have Tom Kunetz, Kimberly Kupiecki, Commissioner Randy Connor, and Vinod Ramachandran all here with us to talk about the film. You've just seen them all on screen, which is really terrific. Great, so I am going to remind everybody here, we are taking Q&A. It's just in the Q&A chat bar, so please put your questions there, and we'll take as many of those as we have time for tonight. But I really want to kick it off, turning it over to Tom Kunetz. So Tom, you're the immediate past president and Board of Trustees member from the Water Environment Federation, former Assistant Director of Monitoring and Research from the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago. So you are the local voice of our Chicago region in the film. And if anyone in this audience has had a chance to tour MWRD, an MWRD facility, Stickney or elsewhere, you know the scale of the work underway there is so impressive. And I think a lot of people never get to see that. So this film takes us behind the scenes a little bit, which is great. But tell us what else we should know about the innovation that's happening at the Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago. What didn't we get to see in the film, and what do you want to share with the audience tonight?
Well, thank you, Elena, and thank you for having me. And you're right. We do have some really exciting stuff going on in Chicago, so we were thrilled to be, part of the film here and to have the producers include us. Now, what you saw going on in the film that we talk about and that I was presenting in the film was about resource recovery, recognizing how water is a very, very important resource to us, but there's more to it when folks put the water down the drain. There's more to it than just the water itself. And what happens to all of that? And as you could see in the film there at the district, what we're doing is creating a fertilizer that goes back into the fields, and it's the circular economy, right? It goes through into our bodies, into the sewage plant, and then we pull out the phosphorus and nitrogen and put it back in as part of the circular economy. Along those lines, one of the things we didn't really get to see too much in the film, we did a lot of filming for a whole day, but it didn't end up in the film on the cutting room floor, was research project that we're doing on our own algae research. You saw in Andalusia with Frank Regala, he has these algae ponds. We have research where we're growing algae vertically, going up, because it shrinks the footprint. In an urban area, we don't have a lot of land like Frank has out there. So with us, the goal is to harvest that algae and then use it for replacement for things like plastics. It becomes a bioplastic, so that precious resources like fossil oils are not used.
Thanks so much, Tom. Yeah, and I know there's that's the tip of the iceberg we're scratching there with everything that's going on at MWRD. Some of what you said, though, the circular economy and the sort of reuse frame, Kimberly, that really resonates with some of what you shared about DuPont's story here. Can you tell us a bit more about what you'd like to bring in that didn't make it into the film about the way you're envisioning the water optimized world?
Sure, yeah. So, I'll go back to the origin story that Paul started with, which is, why do we even put this film together in the first place? And I was also one of those early people he reached out to. And when he shared this concept, it was literally on a piece of paper, digitally, maybe not written on a napkin, but it was like exactly, what sort of I've been looking for, which is telling the story of solutions and the human spirit connected with that, because just showing a bunch of technology isn't very inspiring, but you put the human factor in there like this film did, and in such a beautiful, engaging way. And that really was amazing to have this sort of a cohort now of companies and people coming together to tell the story of, hey, there are some amazing innovators out there doing great work. And how do we then take this energy and knowledge and share it and capture it and really, get that adoption curve much steeper. And so something we've been thinking about a lot is sort of this concept of a water optimized world. And Tommy, you're talking about this idea of taking a mixed stream that's pretty useless as a mixed stream and taking apart the key components of it and using those. So that's much more optimized, right, than just kind of discharging it or burying something in the ground and cause a problem later on. And so at DuPont Water Solutions, we're really about, how do we take this innovation technology, membrane science, separation science, and apply it in as many applications as possible in rural type water, in urban settings and industrial settings, like you saw the dry factory that L'Oreal was talking about. So our tech is in there to do that key separation and purification. But how do you make that sexy, right? So that's really what it's about, sort of lifting up the story, getting more people involved, and getting folks engaged, to drive those changes.
Thank you. That is really inspiring. And I do think this film does so much of that work to try to, at least get people sparked by the story behind the story and to want to learn more. That's clear that it's doing that job. So thanks for sharing that. Commissioner Connor, you are the other side of water in Chicago and in our region. So I want to make sure we hear from you. The city is doing so much to address water access issues locally. And I think sometimes we can forget that water access is not just something that the rest of the world is dealing with. It's also an issue right here at home, and infrastructure is a pressing concern. So talk to us about what you're doing here to address that, and how we should think about water innovation from a drinking water perspective.
Well, absolutely. So first of all, good evening. Thank you for having me on this panel, Elena. It's a pleasure to be here. And one of the things that I really want to talk about is our capital program. And that capital program is a 10-year program that by the end of the 10th year, we would have replaced about 880 miles of water main. When this program started, we realized there was about 13% loss within our system, just in the stuff, not counting when the fire department opens the hydrants, other things that may play into that. But it was just in our system alone. So with that, so now by the end of the 10th year, we're thinking that the models are showing us that we would have bettered that 13% and brought it down to 9% loss in the system, which is huge, right? Especially seeing that we sit on with Michigan at our back door, right? But like we always said, that water won't always be there. So it's our job to ensure that, we protect that precious resource. And, and like you said, accessibility, ensuring that our infrastructure is strong. Also, making sure that the residents of the city of Chicago, as well as the other 5 million people that we provide water to, that we are giving them opportunity to have access to water, which means that we have to partner with them, whether it's on different programs for ensuring that that they can afford the billing. We're doing a rate study.
Yep.
Some regional things, trying to be more of a regional water supplier opposed to just the city of Chicago and the suburbs. And once you start doing that, you open up the door for better product, for better rates, better prices, better infrastructure. And again, it's not just a City of Chicago problem, it's a problem throughout the region.
Right. Yeah. And I know that it's hard to tell the story of something that people take for granted so much every day, but you see it, we see the trucks out there. There's so much work that's happening that's kind of doing the work of telling some of that story as well. Vinod, I would love to hear from you, speaking to go back from local to global. You're looking at how to scale innovation around the world, right? So how does this happen? How do you identify problems in one place and then use them to create solutions in another, and vice versa? Tell us about how innovation travels.
Sure. First of all, we're excited to be part of this film. It gives us a great opportunity to get the message beyond the water industry for us. And while we shot this originally, I was based out of Singapore, which is really a microcosm of the world in terms of you have all the water challenges there. It's a very water stressed country. And just looking at the portfolio of innovations that we were working in the country, and we have a global technology and innovation team, and we're working in the wastewater field in terms of all the topics that we mentioned in the documentary and also in the panel around energy recovery, to convert, to push desalination power consumption to be lesser than what it is today, and also new flow sheets. In that perspective, I think we work to advance technologies and to bring that to the rest of the world. And the way we would like to collaborate is usually around global teams, and it was very exciting to share some of those stories. So many of those didn't make it to the movie because of the cut, and it was exciting to share that with the wider team.
Right. So speaking of diverse teams, Kimberly, as a woman in water, I would love to hear how you think about diversity driving success, especially in the innovation line of the business.
Yeah, sure. So I sort of have a tale of two cities in a sense with that, because if you look at the macro, I guess, industry, and, when I go to these conferences and a lot of these events, and, I think it is still feels like an electric utility type crowd, lots of, sort of very male dominated. But I also have a microcosm I'm working with, which is in my own leadership team. So in our global leadership team, we have, probably 10 or 12 different countries represented at least. We have about half and half gender. So people from just all over the world. And I guess I've gotten a little bit spoiled with that, I'll say. I just find it so incredibly valuable to be able to tap into people who just are coming from all different cultures, living in those cultures right now, and bringing that diversity of thought into your decision making, your strategy, how you work with your customers, all those sorts of things. And when new people, I just had a recent new person enter my team, and she was like stricken by how she's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how diverse your team is. And I'm like, you're right. Like, I sort of take that for granted. But I think that the film actually does represent a whole lot of diversity as well. But I would posit and challenge that we need more diversity, especially when it comes to sort of that science engineering side of thing, and definitely getting more women involved. And in fact, I'm in this little ad hoc group called Women in Water. And we have a little LinkedIn group as well. If anybody wants to join, give me a shout on LinkedIn and we'll get you into it. But we're just trying to promote more women in water as well, because I think, taking that microcosm diversity that I have and imagining that being like the whole space and the whole industry, it would be really powerful and help us move forward.
Right, and it's certainly something that we cannot take for granted and have to work on really intentionally, across all of our business lines. And really exciting to see some of the educational opportunities to do that. So this film being a start. So I'm actually going to go to the Q&A because we have a ton of questions coming in. And please continue to submit your questions in the Q&A if you've got them. So one that I'd like to take is about a really specific problem, but it's one that's really relevant here in Illinois in our state. So water used in irrigation is the largest use of water in the world. Does anyone have insights on how this is being addressed, or some technologies that you know about, or innovators that people should have on the radar? Really relevant question here in our agricultural state of Illinois.
Elena, from our side, we have the stormwater ordinance, which actually puts in place so that when people building their buildings, they have to have so much storage on their property. So within the ordinance, we're also encouraging people to use that water for irrigation, when they water their flowers, their bushes, and any type of urban garden. A few years ago, we had the Rain Barrel program, which was a huge success, but it just wasn't really sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
So, trying to bring that back, we decided to really enforce the stormwater ordinance and just tell people that, you can't dump your water into the sewer system, especially the rainwater and the stormwater, but use it for irrigation. So that way, again, it's protecting, the Great Lakes, it's protecting our water source. So that's one of the ways that, that we're trying to encourage it.
Yeah, we've got actually multiple questions about agriculture here. And one I think is about how we think about macro and system level planning. And this is a really interesting provocation, I think, not easy to address, but how, as we think to the future, how might we plan the location of ag so that it can be grown closer to water sources? Like those of you that are in global conversations, as opposed to having soy in California, a very water stressed region, how can we think about the planning and sort of system change work it would take to, right size and right location, I guess, some of the water intensive industries like ag. Anybody have a global view on that? It's a tough one.
Sure. Well, I'll start talking about that a little bit because that is something from the Water Environment Federation perspective. We look at water in a big picture, and you hit something very important there, Elena, when you're talking about, should we be putting the agriculture source closer to where the water is? What's been happening in the past, our development has often been putting the housing and where we live close to where we work. And as things change and how we work is not as important as making sure that we have enough food. So the long term, in some places like they're doing a little bit of this in the city of Detroit, where they have the ability, where you have an urban area that's a tremendous number of people have left and they have this land, they have the ability to do what you're saying, long-term planning, so that you have the food sources grown closer to where the people live and work, and to have the areas of the resources that are available, like we saw in the film there in the Netherlands, recycling their own water. I think we're going to get to a point, we have to get to a point where it's going to be a lot more on the neighborhood scale, if not on the home-to-home scale, where we're going to be keeping these resources tight in, whether it's the water, the organic matter, the energy, and so on, so that it does get into more of that tight community scale as opposed to a much more spread out, which, as we see, you have to move water tremendous distances. That's energy. It takes a lot of energy to move water. It's very heavy.
Yeah, great. So really interesting question for our local audience, but also totally relevant globally. Our water systems in Chicago are big water, right? Big systems, big infrastructure. And in this film, there's tons of examples of really interesting, small, distributed solutions. What are the places in our region that we can think about making a shift to more small scale, distributed, potentially resilient pieces of water distribution or drinking water? I mean, are they appropriate for some things, not appropriate for others? Anybody want to weigh in on that? I think it's a really interesting scale question.
Well, I think in the city of Chicago is a little difficult just because of the amount of area that we have to cover. But I would like to say that a lot of our suburban customers that we provide water to, actually their systems are smaller scale, right? And they actually kind of mimic what the city of Chicago systems are. And what's great about those systems is that they're not using as much energy to move that water, because they don't necessarily require the 32 and 40 inch feeder mains. They can use 16-inch feeder mains and more of 8-inch grid mains, which would transport water a lot more efficiently. And they're also starting to use more energy efficient the pumps in their smaller pumping stations. So it's little things that they're doing where they're gaining the efficiencies on the energy side, as well as still being able to provide their customers with water and anyone downstream from them.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other option is to look at some of the other cities that are tackling this as well. So definitely I would, look to San Francisco, where they're doing a lot of in-building water reuse, recycle, and starting to think through, like, how do we actually standardize this technology, almost make it like a black box. But looking at the new Salesforce Tower in downtown San Francisco, which is having a black water system and being, pretty much independent from city water. So there's probably other examples even in US cities, to get some sort of guidance, so you don't just reinvent it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to throw a third one on there, Elena, and that is that urine diversion. Now, there's something that technology-wise, very simple. It's about the infrastructure. But how much water we can save and how much energy we save if we can divert the urine streams, and that water, which is basically pure, just get it cleaned up, put it right into fertilizer, and it eliminates the amount of water that actually goes to a sewage plant for treatment. Just have the brown water go to the plant. So urine diversion, I think, is something simple from a technology standpoint.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one that's got a good storytelling challenge ahead of it, I think, to lay the track for adoption at a large scale. So another scale question, and this one's about recycling industrial wastewater. So the question is, have economies of scale on deployment allowed more companies to be able to sort of integrate recycling, industrial wastewater recycling equipment into their businesses at an affordable, economical price? And if not, what's it going to take to get there?
Yeah, I can start and people can jump in, but this is like my day-to-day world, right? Working with, companies like L'Oreal and others in the Fortune 500 who have very aggressive circular economy goals, wastewater reuse goals, but at the same time, they have to balance that out with deployment of capital and, driving their own financials, especially in this economy, which is challenging. So, you have to solve for all of it together. And, one way we do that is to really understand what the challenge is and to help them figure out, okay, are you trying to extract, say, a valuable process ingredient? Are you trying to extract a solvent, a process, say, surfactant, so you can use it again? Again, back to Tom, your great point about taking that stream and can you separate it out smartly? And the tech has become sophisticated enough and starting to become digitized to do just that. So we're starting to see that type of demand in industry, and they are, looking for reasonable payback and ROI. So it all comes together.
Yeah, so the fun about industry is no two problems are the same, right? It changes based on the industry, based on the geography, and so on and so forth. And, the goal is really to make technology viable and efficient, and really looking at the basic pieces of core technologies and how it can be adaptable on a local level. So I would say, depending on the region, the technologies that are available. We spoke about the example of textiles in India or other major industries, as Kimberly just mentioned. Many of these corporates have that in the water agenda, V2030, 2035. And, it's exciting to see that reuse is coming a part of the normal conversation now. And many of these technologies will have a large game to play in the coming decade, if you like, to help.
Mm-hmm. This one might be for Tom, but we'll see. A number of wastewater plants have permits to further limit phosphorus release. So this is about phosphorus contamination. Will it be the same approximate expense to set up a plant to harvest it, as well as nitrogen, and make them reusable, as it would be to set up a plant to remove it altogether? So this is to the circular, how do we turn waste elements into productive elements?
So actually right now, the economy for pulling phosphorus out, the cheapest way to do it is do chemical precipitation. You take an inorganic salt like ferric chloride, it combines with the phosphorus, it sinks to the bottom, boom, gone. Problem with that is that the ferric chloride combines with that phosphorus and it's no longer bioavailable. Plants can't use it. That phosphorus is gone. As they say in the film, by 2034, we're going to start running out of phosphorus. Okay, other things that I've seen is by the end of the century. Either way, it's in our lifetime, our children's lifetime. And phosphorus is a non-renewable resource. So regardless of the cost, we have an obligation, we have a moral obligation to get these resources, put them back into the economy. It's like that song that they talk about, you don't know what you got until it's gone, right? Or as Benjamin Franklin said, you don't know the value of water until the well is dry. Well, we're getting there with phosphorus. And I think it's a moral obligation to be pulling that phosphorus out and reusing it. Now, one of the things I talked about in the film, when we do in Chicago, we actually get a revenue stream. It's not enough to pay for the entire process, but then again, that's not the reason that we're doing it. We're not doing it to make money. We are doing it to put that resource back into a place where it's doing good and away from a place where it would do bad.
Mm-hmm. Great. We had another question about the price of water, since you raised that. We're not paying enough for water. And in some places, Commissioner Connor, you mentioned we're doing things to make sure that people who can't afford basic water access can afford it, because it's so essential. I mean, particularly now we're seeing that more than ever in a time of a major public health crisis that requires, lots of daily hand washing. So how do we think about some of the broken economics around water? Are there examples of places that have really done a good job moving towards sort of a better way to price, a better way to distribute, models that you'd call out?
So we're actually doing all of our research now, and so just to kind of bring it into context, so the price of water in Chicago is probably the second lowest within the country, right? We're right now, it's beginning June 1, it just went up to $4.01 per 1,000 gallons.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that we're really not in the business to make money off the water, but just to make sure that we are able to sustain the system. And I think that we have to take a look at these different cities and take a look at what's going on in these different neighborhoods, right? To understand, why Mrs. Jones cannot afford the water, what's going on in that household, what else is taking money away from that household so they can't afford water. And once you figure that out, you can build a more effective program. And one of the programs that we're doing now is utility billing relief. And how that works is it's kind of modeled where you get on a payment plan for 12 months. And once you've satisfied that payment plan, there's a debt forgiveness. So you're able to, whatever that back debt is that you owe, it's gone. I think that's a step in the right direction. Because again, we have to make sure that people can afford the water. And the other thing that we found out is that 40% of the city of Chicago is non-metered. So you're actually paying for water that you're not using, right? So that's one of the issues as well. So we're working on legislation in Chicago to try to make it so that everyone that lives in the city has a meter and that they're paying for exactly what they're using, not some average cost or average price that we give out.
Right, and with metering, we find that people also use less water, right? I mean, it's linked to the behavior change and everything that we want to see, being able to monitor it and conserve it. So I would love, we only have a few more, we're actually over time, but this has been such a great conversation. I want to make sure we're wrapping it up with a few final questions, and then I am sure we can figure out a way to get the remaining questions I haven't gotten to. There's a flood of them on the screen. But what gives you hope? All of you have been in this work for quite some time now. We've all seen the film, we've been inspired. What are some of the things that really you see as like 5 or 10 years trends to look for that, things that inspire some hope for change?
Well, I'll start off here. And the hope that I see is the young generation, the folks coming up, our next workforce, how connected they are. They've grown up with social media and various things. It's that connection where they're going to have, as Kimberly talked about before, having that diversity of thought. Those are the types of things that are going to create the environment that allows for the innovative ideas, the creativity to solve the problems, and the desire to want to solve the problems, and the passing of the information. And the recognition that we are all connected, that what I do impacts somebody in my next town, in the next state, in the next country. And this recognition of how much that we are connected to other human beings and to the environment, our world, I think is really recognized by the next generation. And that's what gives me hope.
Great.
Yeah, as a mom of 3 daughters, I totally align with you on that. And this generation is the most tolerant that I've encountered, I think we're heading into a very different world. You're seeing the activism all over the world. I happen to be based in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I'm amazed at the waves of just engagement from, I know it's such a tragedy, but it feels, a lot of people are saying it feels a little different. And I think the same goes true for, environmental issues all around, because these things are all connected. All the inequality and the environmental differences between how people live, education. And if you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, the UN, they're pretty smart. And if you look at water, it's in the center. And I have an amazing graphic I'd love to share with all of you, but it shows number 6, SDG in the center, and everything else is around it. It affects everything else. And so if we can start making those connections, like we are, like with our customers and that textile factory, that's our customer, with communities all over the world, with groups like Charity Water, with this film. I mean, we're just pushing and driving as much as we can for that engagement. So that gives me a lot of hope.
Yeah, and just to chime in and to really piggyback and really agree with what Tom and Kimberly are saying, what I've realized, what's giving me hope is, again, like the next generation of people. And like I explained to my daughter, I tell her all the time that, what I do now isn't for me, it's for you and your children and your grandchildren. So it's the type of world where that they're finally realizing that they don't have to live in a bubble, and they should live in a bubble, and that everything that they do affects someone else, affects another city, another state, another country. So they have to look at this thing a lot more globally to ensure that the decisions that are made are the decisions that are going to be for the betterment of not just the city of Chicago or the state of Illinois, but just everyone around where this issue of water is really affecting.
And just to add on to that, I think it's within 10 years, if you take that journey, it's about resource revolution, right? Changing the dynamics from wastewater to resource recovery and revolution, affordability and accessibility of technologies for a wider audience, if you like, to help achieve those goals.
That's great. Well, and I want to end where I said we would, and that's with a call to action. So this film is a call to action. It's definitely inspiring. We saw from the poll that it hit its mark there. But what should we do with all this inspiration? What should this audience that is on this screening today and listening to all of you talk, what should we walk away from here and do?
So what I want folks to recognize is that there's no such thing as a waste, only a resource out of place. Think about everything that you are doing, whatever you're throwing away, whether it's down the drain or in the garbage can, that's a potential resource. And resources are very limited. You don't know what you got till it's gone.
Thank you. Yep.
Absolutely, and I agree with Tom that you don't know what you got until it's gone. And we know that we're drawing water out of Lake Michigan more and more every day, even though we're not drawing as much and we haven't really reached our allocation yet. But you can see what's going on. And I just want people to know that eventually that resource is going to go away, or it has the tendency to go away. So we want to make sure that we are, recycling as much as we can, reusing as much as we can, and really paying attention to conserving that resource.
For me, the main takeaway has been that there are things we can do today and not 20 years from now. And while we look to improve technologies and make it more accessible and so on, these technologies that are out there can be used for resource recovery or enhancing the efficiencies of plants. And it all comes down to education and events like these. And I think that that's one we are proud to be a part of.
Mm-hmm.
Kimberly, you've got the last word.
Yeah, no, I think it's been a really great dialogue, and call to action. There's so many options. It depends on kind of what your jam is, right? Like if you want to get involved locally or globally, or with there's so many different organizations who are working on water projects for folks who have no access, like Charity Water, USAID. Or you can just kind of get involved in STEM with young girls education. There's really so many options, but I think the key thing is just kind of be aware, like look around, because people take water for granted. It's for the most part, of course we're in this world where we are taking water for granted, and I think a lot of the world doesn't, and I think we're all starting to get on the same page of not taking water for granted. So I think it's just kind of being aware and making those different choices.
Great, great. Well, I will tell you, my action item is to first thank all of you, but then to go back, we are going to put together a list of some of the to-dos and some of the references that you guys have already shared with us, which is terrific. We'll make those available on our website. We'll also send them out to everyone who signed up to participate tonight. So all I have left to do is thank you all for joining us. I know it's at least if you're in Chicago, it is a beautiful summer night. Thank you for taking your time to be with us and just be inspired by the film, and hopefully to take a lot of action to help us build a braver, bluer world together. So thanks so much for everything, and thank you to the panelists, especially for this great conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elena.
All right. Take care, everybody. Be safe.
Good night.
Good night.